Hello everyone, my name is Nikhil Kukumani, and I will be covering the data visualization portion of this case study. So quickly, before I get into the visualizations that I have come up with, um, I just want to talk quickly about data visualization. The importance of data visualization is that it allows you to share certain aspects of your data with your audience. And it is very important to choose a certain type of visualization based on what you're trying to convey. There are so many different types of visualizations: bar charts, line charts, pie charts, histograms, etc., etc. Um, and they all convey different things. So it is important to make sure that you have picked the right type of visualization based on what you are trying to convey. So let's get into what I have come up with and my fellow TAs have come up with. First, I want to get into the bar charts. Because our data yields like a quantitative measure of the total number of cases over time of each of these 6 countries: China, Dominican Republic, Canada, France, Italy, and India. I've decided to use a bar chart since a bar charts are great ways of depicting quantitative types of data. Um, so here I have the total number of cases in each country as of April 22nd, 2020. And from this, a few things that we can see are Italy has the most number of cases, and the Dominican Republic has the least number of cases based on the data that we have. Moving on, I've decided also to split up the countries based on their development status. What I mean by this is if they have a developed economy and a developing economy. And so out of the 6 countries above, whatever countries are classified as developed, as a developed economy, I've added up their total number of cases into one bar. And for all the 6 countries, out of the 6 countries, all the countries that are developing economies, I took their total cases as of April 22nd, added them up, and made this bar over here. And it's very obvious to see that there there are way more cases in the developed economy countries than there are in the developing economy countries. So that's just another interesting thing that we can see using visualization. Um, Finally, just like how the countries were divided up into developed and developing economies, the countries were also divided up based on the type of measure they have enacted in order to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Um, so here we have 2 countries on full lockdown, 2 countries on partial lockdown, and 2 countries declared a state of emergency. And I have summed each up similarly to what I did with development status. And from this bar chart, we can easily see that partial lockdown, countries with partial lockdown have the most number of cases, with full lockdown not too far behind. So just like an interesting inference we can make based on this particular chart is maybe partial lockdowns is not the most effective type of measure um, for countries that are trying to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So those are bar charts. Another type of chart that I've decided to use is a line chart or the line graph. The line graph is great because it allows you to show growth rates over a period of time. And as you could see from the tables, we have the number of cases have been mapped out from a period between January 22nd and April 22nd, 2020. So a line graph would be perfect to represent the change in like how the total number of cases is increased or decreased for each country throughout this time period. So that's basically what this shows from January 22nd to the end would be April 22nd. We have these lines depicting the total number of cases for each country. And as we can see, Italy has the highest growth rate. It's increasing at the most steep angle. And that kind of goes along with what we saw in our bar graph, which shows that Italy has the highest number of cases. So just another way to show some interesting things. For example, the bar graph showed the number of cases in China, but it didn't show that China's growth rate has actually leveled off and seems to have hit its ceiling. Uh, and that's something that you don't get from the bar graph that you do get from the line graph. So just like an interesting thing about how choosing your visualization um, can help show certain aspects of the data. So that was all the raw data before it was normalized. Now we're going to get into visualizations that we have created using the normalized data. You can pause the video and read how we have normalized the data in terms of date and population. But basically what we did is we've normalized the data in terms of date and population. In terms of date, we did it based on when, by the date in which a certain country has implemented its preventative measure against the country. And we have measured 14 days since that date for each country. And we have also normalized based on population by simply dividing the total cases by the total population of each, specifically of each country. Um, and we have come up with some interesting visualizations based on this normalized data. So first we have a line graph that depicts the growth rate 14 for the first 14 days after a lockdown measure has been implemented, or whatever measure has been implemented in each country. As we can see, these three countries at the bottom seem to have the flattest curves, which implies that the growth rates for these three countries, specifically they are Canada, India, and the Dominican Republic. These two countries, the flat curve signifies that maybe the preventative measure that these countries took probably has done a good job in decreasing the growth rate of the coronavirus, or at least stalling it, as the number of cases has not grown tremendously in the 14 days since these three countries implemented their specific preventative measures. But you can see here in China and here in France, there have been periods of sharp incline, which seem to show that maybe the preventative measures that China and France have enacted may not be the best preventive measure for their countries. So here's more data just normalizing our, here's more code normalizing our data based on population and date. And the resulting table shows the data that we'll be using. And here we have another similar graph that shows just how effective the measures were in each country based on the growth rate of the coronavirus over time. And finally, I have some graphs based on the non-normalized data, just showing how developed economies and developing economies may have had some effect on the growth rate of the coronavirus over time, and the type of measure enacted in each country, and how the type of measure might have some effect on the growth rate of corona. In this case, for example, we can see that the partial lockdown seemed to have worked for a little bit before it had a second wave, and the total cases exponentially increased. The full lockdowns did well to keep the numbers low until it no longer couldn't, and people started falling ill one after another at a very exponential rate. The state of emergency declared shows that the growth rate hasn't increased yet, but there's potential for it to go up in the future. So yeah, these are the data visualizations that we have come up with. And I hope you guys can see that depending on what type of data visualization that you choose, you can depict many different things about the data that you're examining.